I sure as hell hope you know what you're doing here.
Don't worry, I took care of him. You'll see. So, what was he talking about back there?
Nothing. He made me an offer. That's all.
Yeah, I figured out that much. What kind of offer?
He wanted me to whack you. Said he'd make me a capo. Give me my own crew. You know, pretty much everything I ever wanted.
Yeah? So why the hell didn't you do it?
Remember that $5 you owe me?
Remember that $5 you owed me. So this is one of the most deceptively simple, emotionally loaded farewell lines in modern crime game storytelling. See, it's a sentence that's built from banter, delivered in a moment that's soaked in doom, and what makes it hit so hard is now how the tone contradicts the reality surrounding it. Now you see, Joe he uses this. So Joe's the character is one of the characters in the game Mafia II. So Joe he uses humor the same way that many Mafia tough guys do, as armor. Now see, throughout the game, Joe is the loudmouth. He's the Joker. He's the guy who diffuses danger with a laugh. And that line is Joe staying in character to the very end. So really, it's his emotional camouflage, a last attempt to act like everything is normal. But Joe, he isn't stupid. He sees a separate car, he sees the men flanking him, and he knows that this isn't a celebratory ride home. And the joke now becomes a shield, a final refusal to show fear. So the $5 is intentionally trivial, and it's really the kind of thing that you say to a lifelong friend, not a crew member, and it anchors the moment in their shared history, their small time days, their neighborhood mischief, and their brotherhood long before the mafia politics swallowed their lives. And that line tells Vito that whatever happens next, I'm still your brother. I want our last moment to feel like the old days. And it's a tiny reminder of the world that they built together and of how far that they've fallen from it. And the tragedy of this is that Vito's deal for survival did not include Joe, and Joe knows it. Vito realizes it too late. And now the line becomes bitterness hidden as comedy, loyalty in the face of betrayal, and a farewell disguised as a joke. And it stings because Joe is trying to make Vito feel okay, even though Joe is the one that's about to pay the ultimate price. So on the surface, it's a debt collection gag. Underneath, it's a final message saying, "Don't blame yourself, Vito. This is just how it ends for guys like us." And when the car doors close, that silly little line becomes the emotional gut punch, the symbolic last handshake between two men who survived war, poverty, crime, betrayal, and bloodshed together, and only for politics to tear them down. So this haunts a lot of players because Joe, he doesn't scream, he doesn't plead, and he doesn't accuse. He just reminds his best friend that he owes him $5, a small human memory in the middle of a life or death power play. So it's a contrast between casual tone and catastrophic context, and that makes it unforgettable. So that line is Joe's last stand: humor as courage, friendship as defiance, and a simple joke as the final sentence of a man who deserved better.
It's all right, Joe.
Is it done?
It's done.
All right, then. Looks like a celebration is in order. Come on, let's head to the cat house.
Sounds good to me.
Come with me, Vito. There's more we need to talk about.
All right, we'll see you over there.
All right. So what's the big secret? Hey, what the hell's going on? Where they taking Joe?
Sorry, kid. Joe wasn't part of our deal.
So what does the line itself? What does it reveal about Joe and Vito's friendship? Well, for one, it reveals that Joe as a loyal scoundrel. So really a friendship that is built on chaos and devotion. Now Joe, he's always operated on two levels, which is him being a reckless hustler and a fiercely loyal friend. So from childhood to adulthood, Joe is that one constant in Vito's life. He helps Vito escape the military by arranging forged discharge papers. He drags Vito deeper into the underworld, but he also protects him inside it. And then when Vito gets jammed up, Joe is the first one kicking down doors to fix it. So Joe's loyalty isn't clean or isn't not noble, but it's transactional in his mind, but it's heartfelt in spirit. So to Joe, loyalty, it means something, but it also costs something. You stick with your people, and they stick with you. You help your friends, and your friends owe you back. And that's where the $5 line hits perfectly. Because it's a joke, sure, but it's also a symbolic joke, a shorthand for their entire history. Because what Joe really is saying is that we've been through everything together. You owe me, and I owe you. And that's what makes us brothers. And also looking at the line as a final handshake. Because by the time that Joe says this, the atmosphere is thick with danger, betrayal, and looming tragedy. And the future looks bad for Joe, and he knows that. Instead of giving a dramatic farewell, he gives that quip. Why exactly? Because for Joe, humor is armor. That bravado is how he breathes, and jokes are just how he hides how scared he is. And that single line becomes a last attempt at normalcy in a moment that is anything but normal. And it feels like Joe's saying that if this is it, let me say something that feels like us, and let me hold on to and let me hold on to the version of our friendship before everything went to hell. It's a grim, almost tragic bit of familiarity, a final nod to a lifetime of bar fights, bad decisions, and brotherhood. And really, what does it say about Joe's character, all in one sentence? Well, what it says is that he's defined by contradictions: loud but insecure, funny but tragic, loyal but self-destructive. And that $5 joke, it captures all of that. It's cocky, it's flippant, and it's perfectly Joe. But underneath it, it's also a quiet admission that this might be goodbye, but I'm not about to get sentimental on you. And the tragedy is that the joke is the sentiment. And then when we look at the line and how it means and what it means within the game's broader narrative. So when it comes to Joe, it's really a joke. So like the line is like a joke hiding a betrayal. Because the moment really the moment that he says the line, the truth is already unfolding. That he and Vito are not being driven to the same place. That the higher ups have already decided his fate. And that he's not a part of the deal, as what Leo Galante had said in the card of Vito. And what makes that line sting is that Joe, he doesn't lash out or panic. Instead, he tries to just keep things normal. He brings up a tiny debt, $5, like friends teasing each other over, pretty much teasing other during better days. But in the mafia, money isn't just money. It's shorthand for loyalty, for favors, history. And when Joe mentions that small debt, he isn't really talking about cash. He's speaking the language that he and Vito always shared. That's brotherhood in the form of jokes, debts, and shared memories. And the tragedy is that none of that matters to the people who just signed his death warrant. And we also do have on what this line and how it resonates with a lot of the fans, and really what it reveals a lot about the storytelling in Mafia 2. So when it comes to Mafia 2 itself, we do have the loyalty and betrayal being in the same breath. Because on the surface, Joe is joking, and underneath, he's confessing the impossible choice that he made to kill Vito as ordered, or defy the mob in a way that will almost certainly cost him his own life. By disguising that choice behind a casual debt joke, Joe reveals how he processes pain, not by expressing it, but by bearing it under bravado. And fans, they feel the weight because they recognize it. Because the joke itself is not funny, it's a shield. And then when it looks at the brotherhood in a brutal world. So what makes the line sting is that tragic irony that these two men who survived war, poverty and crime, and countless close calls together, they reduce the magnitude of friendship to a running gag about $5. And that tiny detail becomes an anchor, a reminder of the simpler, almost innocent times between them. And the joke, it circles back to an earlier world where loyalty was uncomplicated. That hearing it in a moment of life or death consequence, it makes it tragic. And also when it comes to Joe's character, and once again, it also comes down to his character in one sentence that he's always balanced the humor, the recklessness, and the hidden vulnerability. And that line condenses all of that. It condenses his humor as being dark, fast, and deflective, his loyalty, which is unspoken but absolute, and his fatalism, that if this kills him, so be it. And then his love for Vito, expressed through banter, never sentiment. So the joke, once again, it's not about the money. It's him saying that I'm with you, even if it destroys me. And then the line, it also reframes the entire game. Because as fans often do say, this moment suddenly reinterprets everything that came before. Because the missions, the camaraderie, the shared dreams of rising in the mafia, all of it now turns hollow. Because the world of Mafia 2 was never going to let these two walk away together. And that $5 becomes shorthand for a doomed friendship and a doomed life. And that's why a lot of fans quote this, because it's that emotional turning point where the themes of Mafia 2, where loyalty, consequence, and the illusion of power, where they both crystallize. And all in all, it's also a masterclass in economical storytelling, because the brilliance of the line is its simplicity. There's no speech, no dramatic music swell, no explanation. It's just a throwaway joke that just carries years of history, affection, regret, and inevitability. And this is Mafia 2 at its best. Understated dialogue that trusts the player to understand the emotional subtext behind it. And the writers don't tell you what Joe feels because they let you feel it. And that restraint is what elevates the moment from good to iconic. So really, what is it that we do not know? Is that, so one thing we don't know really is, for one, it's the ambiguity and the unknown. Because after Vito's car is redirected and Joe is taken somewhere else entirely, the game enters its most debated territory. And that fans have argued about this for years. That, does Joe die that night? Does he survive somehow? And is this the beginning of a tragedy or just a temporary split? Now, we do know that in Mafia 3, it does later reveal that Joe is alive and living under Leo Galante's protection, yet that retcon, it doesn't erase the original feeling that players had in 2010, that Joe was being driven to his death. And the power of the scene, it comes from the uncertainty, the way that the guards look at Joe, and the way that Vito realizes that he's powerless, and the silence, and the car doors closing. And that line is the last bit of normalcy before the curtain drops. And really, if there's one popular interpretation, one popular interpretation is that that line is defiant optimism. It's a small, playful reminder that they are still friends, still themselves, even in the face of danger. And another reading is more tragic. It is that it's Joe's clinging to humanity in his final moments, because when you really think about it, when they know about their fate, when they know their fate is sealed, they often reach for something simple, personal, or human. And that joke now it becomes a coping mechanism. And Joe, he uses humor to shield Vito and himself from the fear echoing between them. And the reason why this moment feels like real organized crime tragedy is because the mafia narratives, they often explore how loyalty, power, and betrayal intersect one another. And usually the cruelest part of it is it's not really the violence itself, but it's the emotional fallout of it. Because the scene mirrors the real mob stories where someone is taken for a ride, never to return, and that friends are separated by decisions made far above them, and that fate is decided by the bosses, not brothers. And the ending's ambiguity, it forces the player into that same emotional space that you don't know, that you can't know, and that you're stuck with the dread that Vito feels. So it mirrors the real world mafia tragedies where people simply disappeared, leaving only stories, rumors, and heartache behind. And the power of that unfinished ending, because if the game had shown Joe being killed or they shown him escaping, the moment would lose its punch. Instead, the writers chose the most haunting path. They chose silence, they chose separation, and they chose uncertainty. And because of that, it leaves you feeling unsettled. It feels you feeling frustrated, reflective, and emotionally invested long after the credits roll. And that's the brilliance of that line. Because it's not important because Joe jokes. It's important because it's his last human gesture in a world where humanity gets crushed. So really, to go out ahead and to conclude this, we do want to also touch upon a few more points here. And that, of course, is we talk about the last piece of normal in a world that is not normal anymore. Now, see, Joe, once again, he knows what's happening, and Vito knows what's happening. Everyone in that car knows what's happening. But Joe refuses to play that scene the way that the mafia world demands. So instead of fear, confession, or loyalty pleas, he reaches back to that smallest, dumbest, most normal thread between them, which is that line itself, a $5 debt. Think about that. Like, it's the everyday language of friends, not killers. And in that moment, Joe is clinging to the only part of his identity that hasn't been swallowed by mob politics. The part in where he and Vito were just two neighborhood kids running schemes and watching each other's backs. So that $5 becomes a symbol of a simpler bond, one that existed before their lives had got rearranged by the empire of men above them. And Joe also, when it comes to the debt, that $5 debt is a metaphor for brotherhood. Because Joe isn't actually saying, pay me back. He's saying, I stuck my neck out for you more times than you know. I was loyal even when I shouldn't have been loyal to you. We made choices together, and you got to live with those choices now. So now it becomes existential, saying that you owe me the truth. You owe me the memory. You owe me the acknowledgement of what we became. So it's not guilt. It's not bitterness. It's recognition. The last thing that Joe can get before everything collapses. And it's also a man that's trying to stay human in the moment that he's being dehumanized. So the mafia, it strips you of identity. When you're useful, they use you. And when you're not useful, they dispose of you. And Joe, he knows the score. But instead of going out as a liability, he goes out as Joe Barbaro. Loud, messy, jokey, affectionate, annoying, and loyal to a fault. So that line is an act of rebellion, saying that I won't let you end me as a problem. You'll end me as your friend. And there's power in that too. And then the punchline that isn't a punchline. So his line, it works because it refuses the dramatic closure that you expect from tragic characters. It's not a speech. It's not an apology. It's not even a revelation. It's a joke, but one that's carrying 1,000 unspoken truths. And the real tragedy is that Vito, he doesn't get the chance to answer that. And that's why the line stick with us. The reason why that line stick with us is because it lingers because it's human, it's small, and it's honest. So really, in a story that's filled with violence and empire building, the thing that breaks you is a friend joking about $5. And because beneath all the shootouts and betrayals, that was always the heart of Mafia 2. Two friends trying to survive a world that does not care about friendship. So Joe's last words don't tie up the story, but they expose its wound. So you owe me not money, memory, brotherhood, the truth about who we are.